from Ubok, and I'm here with Alyson Noël, the author of these books here, Norwegian, Arven and Dolken, and the Immortal Series. So do you think you could tell us a little bit about those series?
Well, the Immortal Series was a 6-book series, and it was about Ever Bloom and Damon August, who were sort of two star-crossed lovers that have known each other for 400 years through Ever's various lifetimes and Damon's one single immortal lifetime. It's hard to sum it up in a 6-book series, but I could say that it's sort of an epic romance with a lot of adventure that delves in themes of magic and mysticism and reincarnation and ghosts and mediums and all kinds of psychic paranormal phenomenon, which are kind of things I've always been interested in. The Soul Seekers series is my newer series, and it deals with a lot of magical, mystical themes as well, but it's a very different sort of environment in this book. I deal with a lot of shamanism and sort of Native American lore. It's about 16-year-old Vera Santos, who lives a pretty glamorous life as a makeup artist's daughter. She travels the world jet-setting, moving from movie set to movie set until she starts having these terrifying hallucinations on her 16th birthday, and it turns out that they are sort of the onset to her biological ancestral legacy as a seeker, and she goes to live with a grandmother she's never met and has to go through a really brutal initiation that she may or may not survive. Along the way, she meets some really cute boys, makes some friends, goes on adventures, fights some demons, and it's a really romantic, adventurous, really fun series that I've had a lot of great time writing.
So why have you written about this? I mean, why all the magic and the shamanism?
I try to write about things that interest me. The usual advice is to write what you know, but I think it's far more interesting to write about what interests you. It gives me an excuse to sort of delve into these subjects that, I already have a fascination for. So with the Immortal Series, I do a lot of research in my books because even though they're in fantasy worlds, they're very much grounded in reality, and they're dealing with a lot of existing themes. So for the Soul Seekers series, I took a 3-day psychic development class with James Von Frog, who is a very famous medium, and he also is the executive producer of The Ghost Whisperer, which a lot of people know him from that. And I underwent several sessions of past life hypnosis, where I went to look at past lives, and it's a really fun excuse to do things like that, but I'm also really interested in things like that, and it all sort of fed the world of the book. A lot of the things that I experienced, I was able to give directly to Ever Bloom for her to experience. And the same thing with the Soul Seekers. The idea for the Soul Seekers grew out of all of the research that I had done for the Immortals books. I started noticing themes of shamanism kept appearing, and I was fascinated by this ancient primal practice and wanted to learn more about it. And so I took a 3-day introduction to shamanism class, and I journeyed to the lower world, and I met my spirit animal, and I gave that experience to Dare. When she journeys to the lower world and meets her spirit animal, it's much the same experience that I had when I took that class. And I traveled to New Mexico, where the book takes place, and interviewed local teens and Native Americans, and I was just sort of interested in the ideas and concepts, and then I just sort of expand them and build a story around them.
But why do you write about teenagers?
Well, because I never feel like a grown-up, so it's easier for me to write a teenage character, quite frankly, than it is for me to write a grown-up character. I wrote one adult novel so far. I actually would like to write more, but I had a harder time getting in the head of a 28-year-old than I did getting in the head of a 16-year-old. And I have a lot of empathy for that adolescent journey. It's a really difficult time to go through. Anyone that survived it can look back, and most of us don't want to do it again. But there's something really sort of magical about it as well, because it is filled with first-time experiences, and you could never experience something the second time in quite the same intensity that you did the first time. So I think it's really ripe for storytelling purposes. There's a lot of just raw emotion, And, you know, sort of that journey of finding your voice and who you are and your place in the world is a pretty powerful time. So I like to explore that time of life.
And there's a lot of, like you mentioned, the shamanism and all of that spiritual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of it do you actually believe in?
Oh, well, shamanism is very real. That is one of the most ancient practices. It dates back thousands of years, and indigenous cultures all over the world were practicing in very much the same way and getting very similar outcomes. And I find that fascinating because they had no contact with each other, and yet they're doing really similar practices. And I just sort of found that idea fascinating, this sort of human connection that we all have, no matter where you are in the world. We all want to connect to something greater than ourselves. We're all looking for the same sort of answers. And here are these primitive people that were doing it in very similar ways and having very similar outcomes. I think that as a writer, I don't ever want to be in a place where I think that, where I look at the world as black and white, or where I think that I know all the answers. There's nowhere to go from there. I'd much rather remain in a really open-minded, exploratory state where I believe that really just about anything is possible. And I've had enough sort of experienced enough strange phenomenon to ever count out the, you know, possible existence of former lives or ghosts or anything like that.
What about true love? Do you believe that exists?
Oh, absolutely. I believe it exists on many different levels. I think love is the most powerful force in the universe. And I think love is primarily why we're here. And we seem to have a really hard time with it, with all of the wars and poverty and things like that. But I do believe it's the number one reason that we are here in this experience is to learn how to love ourselves and each other. I think it exists on many levels. I mean, the love someone feels for their dog can be just as real as the love someone feels for their spouse or their best friend or their sibling or, you know, their parent. But I do think it's the driving force, and I think it's the connecting force that everyone longs to be loved for who they are.
Now, is there anything in your books that you don't believe in?
No. Offhand, there may be, but I'm just going to say no. I like to keep an open mind, so I think it's all possible. Yeah. I hope Summerland is a real place. I think that would be terrific.
And we've had a question from Ubok, a user there. She would like to know what you were like when you were young.
Oh God, really? Do I have to tell the truth? I was so cool and everyone loved me. No, actually, I had a really difficult, when they say young, I'm guessing they probably mean when I was a teen, right? I had a really difficult adolescence. I grew up pretty poor, actually. My father left us when I was 12, and I had to start working at that point. My mom had been a housewife for 23 years. She had no education past high school, and so she had to go get a job, and the only thing she was qualified to do was work as a department store sales clerk. So we were, you know, it was minimum wage, and that's what we lived on, and it was hardly enough, you know. I was always worried about losing our house or if there was going to be food to eat, and so I've been sort of taking care of myself and paying my way since I was 12. That experience, I would not change it for anything. I would not want to go back and make it different because it made me who I am, and it gave me a lot of things to draw on as a writer. But at the time, it was sort of isolating because, you know, my friends were all sort of worried about the school dance and who they were going to go with, and I was just like, I'm going to work, you know, I need to make money, I need to keep the house going. So I started feeling really isolated, like I couldn't really relate to anybody, and, you know, I just didn't feel like there was a place for me or that I belonged in the world. And I used to write a lot of short stories, though. I've always wanted to be a writer since I was 12. And for my English class, I would ditch school a lot, too. I was a very bad student, but I was in the honors program. It was a very weird dichotomy. There are not a lot of kids in the honors program that are ditching class, but I was doing that. But one class I would never ditch was my honors English class. One, because I loved my teacher, and I thought it would be disrespectful to ditch his class. So I went every day, and I would read the books that he assigned, but I would not write the papers. I would turn in a short story instead. And we did this for 2 years. He never mentioned it. He would just take the paper and grade it, like I had written the essay, when in fact it was just some random short story. And I think he sort of recognized a kid with a lot of problems at home, and he was just glad that I was reading and writing. And one day, he stood in front of the class, and he said, one of my students wrote this story. I think it's quite good. I want to share it with you. And I honestly started to put my head on the desk, because I'm like, clearly it's not mine. I was just going to take a nap. That's the kind of student I was. And he started reading it, and it was mine. And honestly, it was a life-changing moment, because it was the first time in a really long time that somebody believed in me. And I thought, wow. And it was someone I really respected. And I thought, wow, maybe there is a place for me in the world. Maybe there is something that I could do. Long story short, when I got my first book published, Faking 19, back in 2005, I thanked that teacher in the acknowledgments. And I went back to my high school. Now it's 20 years later, okay? I don't even know if he would still be there, but I thought I'd take the chance. And he was still there in the same room. It was like a time warp. The same posters on the wall, exactly as I remembered it. He looked exactly as I remembered it. And I got to give him the book and thank him for that moment 20 years ago. Just, a brief thing he did, but it made this huge difference in my life. So there is a very long answer to your question, that I was a dork.
So what were your grades like? Were they good?
I went, like, my freshman and sophomore year of high school, which I don't know how you do it here, but say my first and second year of high school, I had, like, straight A's, and I was, class vice president, and I was really involved. And then at 16, I got a job in a department store, and that sort of took over my life, because, I needed the money to work, and then I just really started losing interest in school and stuff like that. So I got an A in English for my junior, third, and fourth years, and did terribly in everything else. I mean, my report card was actually funny. There was like an A in English, and everything else was dreadful. But I passed. That's all that mattered.
So you've always been good at writing, and you've been writing a lot?
I've always been interested in writing. I don't know if I've always been good at writing, but I've always been interested in writing and storytelling. My mom was a really big reader, so we grew up reading at a young age, and our house was filled with books, and, books were like friends to me, and it stayed that way. Books got me through a tough adolescence. I remember reading Catcher in the Rye when I was in high school, and I was feeling so alone and so isolated from everyone, and reading that book and reading about Holden Caulfield's struggle made me, it was almost like a lifesaver. It made me realize that I wasn't the only one who felt that way. Because when you're a teen and you feel isolated, you're sure that everyone else's life is perfect, and you're the only one who feels like such a loser. I didn't know that other people felt that way, but reading Holden feeling that way made me think, wow, if this J.D. Salinger person wrote about this character, maybe there's more of us, So books were always a sort of sense of solace, friendship, and then sometimes just pure entertainment as well.
Do you have any advice for young writers?
Yes, I do. One is the same thing that every author tells them, but it's for a reason. I think it's really important to read a lot, and to read really widely, and to read outside of your comfort zone, the kind of book you think you're not going to like. Try it out anyways. And to read analytically. If you really like the book, analyze why. What did that author do that captured you? And if you didn't like it, do the same thing, because you can learn just as much from the books that you don't like. But I think the most important thing is there's a sort of romantic idea about being an author, and it may look that way because I got to come to Norway and do this, and that's pretty dang cool. But the truth is, it's a lot of hours by yourself, sacrificing. Everyone's going outside to do whatever, and you're not doing that because you're writing your book and you're on deadline. And when you're first starting out, though, there's no guarantee whatsoever that any of this time and sacrifice is going to pay off. So I think you have to really, really want to do it, because it does require a lot of sacrifice, a lot of saying no, a lot of spending time alone and staying indoors. But once you've made that commitment and you want to do it, I think it's really important to turn off your inner critic, which is the hardest thing to do. But judging your work before it's ready to be judged is a really dangerous thing to do, and I think it stops a lot of people in their tracks. There's this tendency to, we got this great story idea and it's going to look so good. The hard part about writing is translating this idea and this image into actual words that look like the image. And there's a tendency to sort of say, well, my favorite author writes way better than this. This is crap. I'm no good. This is horrible. That's what we do. We all do it. Even experienced authors do this. And the fact is, every first draft is crap. There's no such thing as a good first draft. Your favorite author got to be your favorite author by revising her book over and over and over and over again until it became, what it was supposed to be all along. But it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of revising to get there. So I think it's really important to allow yourself to write badly in order to write well. I think you can't write well until you write badly. And the first draft is really, it's just for your eyes. No one should be reading that. Do not give that to anybody. Okay, don't put your friends through that. Take your time with it. Get it to where you want it to be, and don't judge yourself. Just write badly. Your grammar doesn't have to be any good. You don't have to worry about your punctuation. You can pick the wrong word because you can fix it later, but you can't fix a blank page. So you have to start somewhere, and you have to allow yourself the opportunity to figure out what is the story going to be about. And there's only one way to do that, and that's by experimenting and making mistakes. And I really stress that because I know so many people that have just stopped. They get maybe halfway through would be actually getting pretty far, and that inner critic will make them stop and turn them off and say, I can't do it. And maybe if they had just kept at it a little bit longer and been a little kinder to themselves, they could have done it. But, don't expect so much from the first draft. It's not meant to be good, and it's not meant to be published. It takes many, many drafts to get there. So that is my advice, whether you want to take it or not.
Great. What has been the best and the worst parts of being a writer for you?
I don't know if there's a worst part, actually. The worst part maybe would be like the business stuff, but thank God for good agents, because I don't have a mind for business at all. It's like reading Russian or something. So thank God for good agents, and I adore my agent, Bill Cantardi. He's amazing. The best part is all of it. But really getting to do stuff like this, I didn't even know you could do things like this. It was my 8th book that took off. And suddenly it was being translated all over the world. And I was getting invitations to travel all over the world to meet readers and booksellers and bloggers and publishers and people all over the world. And it's just been the most extraordinary experience. It's been going on a lot for like the last 3 years. And you sort of realize the world feels so vast in some ways until you start traveling a lot. And you realize that you have these connections all over the world. We're all brought together because we love storytelling. We love authors. What you guys are doing to spread that word. It's like a little community of people, and it's really quite extraordinary.
So have you been in Norway before?
I have. I was here 2 years ago, and it was apparently one of your worst winters on record. Which means that from California, I thought I was going to die every time I left my hotel room. And I brought the wrong shoes. I brought like California shoes, like boots with high heels. And I literally thought I was going to die every time I left the hotel room. And I had to have people like on either side of me, keeping me from falling down until I finally just bought some Ugg boots and mailed home the cute boots and just said, I'm going to do this. But it was absolutely beautiful. It was beautiful with all that snow, because that's not something I get to see very often living where I live. But when I was invited back this year, I was really excited at the chance to see it, in springtime and a little bit warmer and green, and it's just lovely. It's an easy place to travel to because everyone speaks such good English. It's so easy to be here.
Is it warm enough for you here now?
It's quite warm, yeah. It's wonderful, yeah. And it stays light so late. I'd forgotten about that because I'd been to Sweden many times. I used to be a flight attendant. I used to fly to Stockholm all the time. But it was always in the winter. So, when it gets dark at like 3 in the afternoon or whatever. And I hadn't ever been here, this far north during the spring, summer. And so it's lovely. The plane landed last night like 10:30 at night. It was still light out. It was wonderful. I love that.
So far, what has been your most favorite thing about Norway?
Oh, the people. Yeah. Really lovely, down-to-earth, fun people.
What about the least favorite one?
I don't think there is one. Yeah. I don't really look for that, When I go anywhere, when I do something, I'm never looking for the part I don't like, so I don't even really notice it. It's got to be glaringly bad for me to notice it. I always just try to make the best of wherever I'm at.
So if we could go back to your book,
Uh-huh.
I'd like to ask you about the characters.
Yeah.
How do you come up with them and develop them?
The idea for the book comes first, always, and it's usually maybe loosely based on something I've been through, like the Immortal Series was based on the grief I experienced. I lost 3 loved ones in 5 months, and then right after that, within 6 months, my husband was diagnosed with leukemia. I almost lost him, and I was sunk in this place of really deep grief. And I was trying to find comfort for myself in sort of answers, like, why does this happen, and this sort of thing. I wrote that book on the side as a secret project, and I had no intention of publishing it. I wrote it for myself. The initial idea for that was spawned by this grief. And then I was sunk in this moment, and I worked through a lot of stuff, personal stuff, through storytelling. And so I started building a story around it. So then I get the idea for the story. I'm going to deal with the soul's journey, and I'm going to involve reincarnation and things like that. And then from there I start casting the story. Okay, so who are going to be the characters that populate this world? Initially, I try to pick the person that is least likely to succeed at whatever task I give them to do, because I want to make life as hard as possible for my character, because that's the way you grow. So for the Immortal Series, I thought, who is the least likely to succeed at this? What I'm going to do to her? Well, Everbloom is a very sort of naive, pampered, young girl who's got a great life, and she's pretty, and she's a cheerleader, and she's a nice family, and her sister thinks she's a rock star, and her boyfriend loves her, and her life is great. And then I kill everybody, including the dog, in a car accident. So now you have this girl who's had like no real world experience. She's been pretty protected and pampered, and she's lost everything she ever knew, and including her dog. And I gave her psychic powers, so now she feels like a freak, and she's used to feeling comfortable wherever she goes and accepted. And now she feels like a freak. And then I move her to a new town to live with an aunt she barely knows. And so now she is set up for complete and total failure. And then she'll have to sort of find her way and really grow and learn to tune out all of the voices around her, giving her advice in order to listen to her own voice, because she had the answers all along. She just got kind of sidetracked by what everyone else was telling her to do. And then Damon, of course, I just wanted to make someone completely dreamy and give him all the attributes that to me would be like the perfect male, So I made sure that he knew how to cook, because I don't cook at all, and so it's hugely important. If I'm going to eat at home and not go to a restaurant every night, I need someone that can cook. I actually married a man that is an amazing cook, and he's a really good artist, and that's sort of a trait I really admire and wish I had. And I just sort of piled on all these attributes, and of course I made him gorgeous too, because why not? If you're going to just build the perfect man, let's make him gorgeous too. And then the friends, Miles and Haven, I wanted Ever to have to become friends with people she normally in her old life they'd be invisible to her. She was just this really popular girl, and she wouldn't have even noticed people like Miles and Haven. But suddenly she's in this new school. She's feeling like a freak. She's not being accepted by anyone. And these are the two people that invite her to sit with them at their table, you know. And so I wanted her to sort of have to experience, you know, different kinds of people and find the commonality that they share. So I guess I'd pick characters, then set them up for complete failure and hope that they make it.
What about the names? You have a lot of, sometimes weird and sometimes very interesting names.
Yeah. Names are really important, and I like unusual names. So I keep a file of names, and every time I start a new book, it's called the Unusual Names File. And every time I start a new book, I go through the list of names, and I try to think, you know, look for names that would fit the type of person I'm thinking about. And I can't even write the character if the name isn't right for them. I can't think of offhand. There was a character I was writing. I can't remember who it was now because I found the right name. It was a couple years back. But the character was just not working for me at all. And I went, oh my God, they have the wrong name. And so I stepped back and I took a couple days to find the right name. And I finally found the right name for that character. And then I was able to create them. They, you know, came to me far more fully. It's funny, I didn't plan ever to be like Ever and then Evermore. The title and the name actually were just sort of separate entities. It didn't actually, because I had a different name when I sold the book to my publisher. I called it My Immortal. It was after a song, and they didn't like that. And so we, you know, go through like, I have this list of titles, and it's just like a huge spreadsheet with probably like 1,000 words on it, just random words that, you know, sort of are, you know, evoke imagery or a feeling or something. And Evermore was on there, and that's the one we ended up going with. But a lot of people think I did it because her name is Ever, and that actually was just a coincidence. It's just kind of funny. And Dare, Santos, and Soul Seekers, I wanted, well, the name is Irish in origin, and Dare is half Irish, half Hispanic, and it just seemed like a good name for a sort of very strong female gutsy character. Oh, and Damon, I wanted to say Damon from the Immortal series. My husband was born on Damon Avenue in Chicago, so that's where that came from.
So what's it been like to switch from writing one series to the other?
Actually, it's really exciting because, you know, as an author, you're always looking for, like, the next idea is, you know, is always really exciting because it's so filled with possibility. It's, like, filled with unmet possibility. And so it's actually pretty exciting to delve into a new world and new characters and create a new mythology, a new romance, you know. I actually had a lot of fun with that. I thought, though, when I finished The Immortals, I thought I was going to be, you know, like clearing the desk and dancing on the table, you know, just like, I finished, and this is such a great moment. But when I did finish, it was the complete opposite reaction. I had become so attached to that story and that world, and I had spent more time with my characters than I did anyone else, and I talked to them more than I did my own husband. And so it was this sort of weird moment of realizing that, you know, they didn't need me anymore and that we weren't going to spend time together anymore, that they were done with me. But, you know, I just dove right into Soul Seekers. And so that was really, really fun just to go into a whole new world.
Is there any series or book that you found was your favorite?
They're all like children in a way. So even though I'm sure I'm my mom's favorite, I won't tell Mom. You can't pick a favorite, you know. Usually my favorite book is the one I haven't written yet. It's the next one, you know, because it's always the one that is sort of just out of reach, but filled with shiny possibility. That's the one you're always most excited about.
Which book has been the easiest to write?
Once I got over the initial freak out over writing a 12-year-old, the Riley Bloom series was really easy to write. Easy in the way that when they first asked me to, I should backtrack a little bit. When they first asked me to create a series for Riley, I jumped at it because I really grew to love her in writing Evermore, and I felt really sad to say goodbye to her. But when I started actually working on the series, I had this initial moment of panic because I'd never written a 12-year-old that carried an entire book. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I know how to write a 12-year-old. I know how to write a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, but 12, I don't know. Not for a whole book. But then I realized, I'm just writing a character that I already knew and loved. It just happens to be that she's 12, but there's no sort of template for 12. This is what 12 looks like, So once I got over that initial kind of feeling like I didn't know how to do 12, I just had to write Riley. Those stories just flew. She's much lighter. She's less burdened. She's 12. She is way overconfident. She thinks she does way more than she does. And there's something kind of delightful about revisiting that time in my life, when I thought it was invincible too. So, probably Riley.
Yeah. Are you finished with writing the Riley series?
For now, but she's still in my head, and she's the type of character, because she's dead, you can do all kinds of things with her, she can go on all kinds of adventures. She can almost sort of time travel in a sense by, in the final book, Whisper, she deals with the ghosts from ancient Rome, and so she's sort of immersed in that world again. There'll be 4 books in the Soul Seeker series, Faded and Echo, which are in Norway now. Mystic is the 3rd book. It was just released in the U.S. a couple weeks ago. And Horizon is the final book that'll be released in the U.S. in November, and I think Norway next spring, if I'm not mistaken. And I finished Horizon. I finished it about 2 months ago. It was amazing how quickly that went. And I've taken a bit of a 2-month break. I haven't taken a writing break in, I think, like 8 or 9 years. So I wasn't even sure what to do with myself. I was just sort of lost for the first few days, but I made myself take this break. But I think I'm ready to get back to writing when I get home. I have 3 different ideas that I'm sort of playing with, and I'll just see which one sort of screams the loudest, and that's the one I'll follow.
Will there be more fantasy and love?
There will always be more love. It's my favorite theme. Always be more love. I may write a contemporary. My next book may be a realistic novel. That I just have this idea that I'm really interested in trying to do. But there will definitely be more fantasy in the future because I love creating those big mystical worlds. Yeah.
So, have any of your movies are any of them gonna become movies?
Well, I've had 15 books optioned for film, and I don't have a movie yet. So, such is the nature of Hollywood. It's really tough, and it's always so exciting to get a book option because you start dreaming of what you're going to wear on the red carpet and things like that. But, the truth is there's so many hoops to go through before it gets to that point. The Soul Seeker series, all 4 books were optioned by Cheyenne Enterprises. That was a very exciting movie option because the person that optioned the books has a real personal interest in the themes that I explore and the magic and shamanism, and he has personally done a journey to the lower world to meet a spirit animal and things like that. So he has a real understanding of these books and a real passion for it. And oh my God, he could do such a great job bringing them to life because he really gets it and really loves it. So I have a lot of hope that he can make something happen with that. And I have one adult book, Fly Me to the Moon. I don't know if it's in Norwegian. It's in German, some other languages. But anyways, Fly Me to the Moon. And that was optioned by Ridley Scott's production company, Scott Free Productions. And it's sort of a chick litty novel. So Sharon McGuire, who directed Bridget Jones' Diary, has written the screenplay for that. And she signed on to direct. But until there's an actual, until I have a movie ticket in my hand, I cross my fingers, I don't hold my breath. So we'll see. It'd be cool though. Yeah.
Okay, so like wrap it up.
Okay.
It would be really nice if you could say hi to the Norwegian readers.
Oh, of course. Hello to my Norwegian readers. I'm so thrilled to be here in your beautiful country and get to meet all of you, or at least some of you. Thank you so much for all the support of my books. I really, really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Thank you. Good job.